That too.
Like 75.
Door prize tickets. Everybody gets a ticket. Does everybody get a seat?
Well, we have more seats up here.
Okay.
I think I'm going up top.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure. Maybe a single. Yeah. Those are like, yeah. Is that seat open?
Yes,
No? Wow.
Thank you.
That's unusual. What about this one?
no, there's a single seat here.
There you go.
That's what I want.
I lost my microphone. You're going to have to help me find it.
There's one right here.
This one? It's just hidden right here. Okay, let's do it.
Time we've sold out. What a great event to do it for. To start off, I'd like to have Don Hurd, the voice of Empower You, come up and lead us in the pledge and the anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Don. Before we get started, it's been a little hectic in the back. If there's anybody that did not get a door prize ticket, please raise your hand and Bill will bring you one. Got one over here. For those of you that are new to Empower You started in 2011, was founded by Dan Reganol, who's also the founder and CEO of Frame USA. And his vision was to present classes on a wide range of topics meant to educate, enjoy, and engage. And I think tonight's an enjoyable night. I don't know about you, maybe educate too. All of our classes, if they're held in the studio, are live streamed. So if you can't make it to the studio sometime, just sign on to our website, empoweruohio.org, about 10 minutes before 7, and you can watch it then. If you can't make either time on that night, We do post it on the website within a couple of days of the class, so you can go back and watch it again. So the good thing is you can go back and relive tonight over however many times you want. We are a free university powered just by donations, so at some point this evening we will pass around our little red buckets, and if you'd like to give a donation to help us keep going, any amount, we appreciate very much. We also like your feedback, good or bad. You can go to info@empoweruohio.org and just leave your comments there. I'd like to tell you about our next two classes coming up. Tomorrow night we're going to have the Doolittle Raid, and that's going to be presented by Airman, I actually forget his actual title, so I'm not going to butcher it, but Ray Hughes is going to be here. He's a wealth of information, knows a lot about the Doolittle Raid, and it's going to be a fantastic class. If you haven't registered, you better register, because as of earlier this afternoon, we had 81, so we could have another sellout tomorrow night. Next Tuesday, we're going to have Jack Grossman here. He wrote the book Child of the Forest, and it's about a young girl who survived during the Holocaust. We've all heard stories of the Holocaust, but this is a brand new one that you haven't heard. And I've read it, Dan's read it, it's a great book. Makes me wonder how many untold stories are out there that we'll never hear about. And now I would like to have Dan come up, and we're going to give away the door prizes. Everybody got a ticket? No, it's tomorrow.
Okay. I don't have the tickets.
Bill, do you have the tickets?
Let's grab the tickets.
Might be helpful.
Just pick random number.
14. Thank you. Happy Tax Day, everybody. Come on now. Hey, listen, we've got two little anniversary people on Tax Day, Roseanne and Ron up here. They've been married 36 years. Let's give them a round of applause. Only Roseanne would get married on Tax Day. I'm sure it was some kind of evil intention. We'll get the kiss cam. We'll get the kiss cam going up there, and we'll be fine. So, okay. So for the first ticket, we've got a plaque that says, "Democracy isn't in the Constitution. Try republic."
Last three numbers, 749.
749. 749. Right back there, Pam Clark. Let's give Pam a round of applause. Way to go. And then we have a little souvenir Tea Party 10th anniversary to give out. And so let's do one more. And that is number 713. 713. Yes. All right. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Don't throw them away. So I'm so happy to see you all here tonight. It's going to be a great night. I had the chance to have dinner a week ago with some of the parties involved. We had a ball. It had been a while. So I was a little bit late in getting started on the Tea Party movement. A friend of mine, Binik-Thomas, who is executive director of Empower You Forever, kind of helped me get going. I was at the rallies and stuff, but I wasn't a member of the club. And I had this event I had to plan where it was in Glendale. We did the tax event probably 7 or 8 years ago. My friend Mike Burnham up there was helping me. And let's give him a round of applause. He's got his Glendale Tea Party shirt on. You know, I said to Nita, Nita, I'm so worried we're not going to have anybody to help clean up at the end of the event. We don't have hardly any volunteers signed up. I mean, how are we going to do this all? And she said to me, she said, Dan, she said, you don't really know Tea Party people. She said, they clean up everything. They will be the most clean people ever in the history. And you know what? That began kind of me getting to meet some of the best people in the entire Cincinnati greater tri-state area, and that's you guys. So give yourself a round of applause. For those of you who got the little pins tonight, if you didn't get one, we'll give you one on the way out. Those are from Nita, who I hope is watching, and we will send her regards and welcome to everybody who's online tonight. So when we started Empower You was one of these groups that splintered off from the Tea Party. You'll hear from a few of them tonight, like Denise Mayer, who's in the front row up here, and a few others. And Empower You was formed by 4 Tea Party leaders: the Eastern Hills Tea Party, the Southwestern Ohio Tea Party. Justin Binik-Thomas joined, and then we had one other Tea Party, which is why I'm all of a sudden forgetting the 4th one, but that's neither way. So, what's that? No, Anderson was a great Tea Party. They weren't involved, but so Empower You started that, and we've been at this now. This is our 17th semester, and I think it's our 320th class tonight. So we're very proud. Our third speaker tonight, Justin Binik-Thomas, who's in the back. If you don't know Justin, raise your hand, Justin, back there. He came to one of our Empower You meetings early on, and he said, you know, these meetings shouldn't be all serious. He said, you guys should have some fun. And he came up with our logo, which says educate, enjoy, and engage. And I love the education. The fun part, we went and tasted bourbon the other night. That was pretty fun. The engage part has always been my favorite part, and that's getting a bunch of people like you to get trained in how to go out into your communities and make a difference. Somebody from Mason sent me this flyer, an email the other day, and said that, you know, you need to be worried about the people on the Mason Council and how much property they own. I don't know if some of you got that same thing or not. And that's an empowered citizen who is watching after their elected officials. So we've got one class I just want to tell you about before we start tonight, and it's June 10th. And it's the state certified open records, open meetings class. I'm gonna pass around a form that hopefully you'll consider signing up tonight, because if you signed up after you went to that class, you'd know how to be one of those empowered citizens that could watch what's going on in your community, and you'd know when something is not going well. Like, for instance, one of my friends up there told me he kind of was concerned about a community we know that from one meeting to the next, all of a sudden the position on something magically changed. Like, kind of like a Gang of 5 kind of thing, for those of you who know it. And it takes this training to be able to understand it. It's 3 hours. It'll be the best 3 hours of your life, and it'll be super interesting. So I'm gonna pass a form out to you. I hope you'll consider signing up. It's free, and it is a super great class. So one of the things Empower You, we always have to know how important we are. So, you know, I remembered Mike when he started the Tea Party. You know, Fox News came and they got really involved and they were following everything. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool on the 10th anniversary if we could get Fox News to come here tonight? So I said, no problem. You know, Mike Wilson's got the big name. Brian Thomas back there, he's the top dog. They'll come. So I called Fox News up and, you know, of course, got their voicemail, but did get through to a producer. And they said, oh, wow, that sounds like such a great idea. But they said, we've got something so much more important than your event on tax day. And so I said, well, what would that be? And they said, well, we're going to have a Bernie Sanders town hall. So I don't know. Maybe some things have changed in 10 years. I don't know. But anyway, I'm so glad you're here tonight and you could come. I'm just going to give you a short rundown of our 3 speakers tonight, and then I'm going to let you introduce you to Brian, who you know, and he's going to say a few words. So Mike Wilson is a Cincinnati native and graduate of St. Xavier High. He has 3 kids. I think are they all here? Are they all here? Two of the 3 are here tonight. And he was at the forefront of the Tea Party movement locally and across the state of Ohio. He's been in IT for a long time and has been a coach of his kids' games. People in the original Tea Party, they were so encouraged to run for office. And Mike really took that on and really did it. And it was a great thing. And I'm gonna let him talk to you about that, because it still makes me kind of sad. He originally won the primary easily, and after he decided he wasn't going to be in politics, he re-engaged his IT career. George Brenneman was the leader of the incredibly successful Southwestern Ohio Tea Party. He'll be with you tonight, and he's got so many people on the west side. Whenever we go over there, they say, "When's George going to get the Southwest Tea Party?" And that'll be the question for you tonight, George. And George has gone off on his own into engineering and is running his own company. Justin Binik-Thomas is a senior manager at a drug development research organization. At the beginning of the Cincinnati Tea Party, he was responsible for marketing and communication for the team, and he's got a bunch of good stories to tell you about. We're going to start off. We've got, if I could get Betty to turn off the lights, we've got just a short video that's going to kind of kick off tonight. I hope you will remember it well. Mike Wilson, could you close that door back there? So here we go. Stand by. Read their lips. We'll get it going.
Rick Santelli and Jason Roney of Charlotte Capital are standing by at the CME Group in Chicago. And Rick, have you been listening to this conversation?
Listening to it, I've been just glued to it because
Rick Santelli and Jason Roney of Charlotte Capital are standing by at the CME Group in Chicago. And Rick, have you been listening to this conversation?
Listening to it, I've been just glued to it because Mr. Ross has nailed it. You know, the government is promoting bad behavior because we certainly don't want to put stimulus forth and give people a whopping $8 or $10 in their check and think that they ought to save it. And in terms of modifications, I'll tell you what, I have an idea. You know, the new administration's big on computers and technology. How about this, President and new administration? Why don't you put up a website to have people vote on the internet as a referendum to see if we really want to subsidize the losers' mortgages, or would we like to at least buy cars and buy houses in foreclosure and give them to people that might have a chance to actually prosper down the road and reward people that could carry the water instead of drink the water?
Hey, Rick,
It's a novel idea.
Hey, Rick, did you?
What? Who thought that?
Yeah, they're like putty in your hands. Did you hear?
No, they're not, Joe. They're not like putty in our hands. This is America. How many of you people want to pay for your neighbor's mortgage that has an extra bathroom and can't pay their bills? Raise their hand.
How about we all?
President Obama, are you listening?
How about we all stop paying our mortgage? It's a moral hazard.
This is like mob rule here. I'm getting scared. I'm glad I'm.
Don't get scared, Joe. They're already scaring you. You know, Cuba used to have mansions and a relatively decent economy. They moved from the individual to the collective. Now they're driving 54 Chevys. Maybe the last great car to come out of Detroit.
They're driving them on water too, which is a little strange to watch at
There
times.
you go.
Hey, Rick, how about the notion that Wilbur pointed out you can go down to 2% on the mortgage?
You could go down to minus 2%.
And still have
40%.
And still have 40% not be able to do it. So why are they in the house? Why are we trying to keep them in the house?
Mr. Summers is a great economist, but boy, I'd love the answer to that one.
Jason,
You get people fired up.
Jason, you want
We're
to?
thinking of having a Chicago Tea Party in July. All you capitalists that want to show up to Lake Michigan, I'm going to start organizing.
What are you dumping in? What are you dumping in this time? How's it,
We're
Mark?
going to be dumping in some derivative securities. What do you think about
Mayor
that?
Daley is marshaling the police right now.
Rabble route.
National Guard.
Jason, are you nearby? Can you hear the cheering?
I am, but I don't have a gallery directly behind me, so it's going to be tough to follow that act.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. You
I'm going
agree?
to have to run down to the pit. Well, clearly, we're going to debate the moral issues of what government is and is not doing for some years to come. I mean, it's apparent, even for traders, it's the market gaps up and down a significant amount each day just on what one government may or may not do. We're up 10 points or so in the S&P on the idea that core Europe may have some bank stability plan. So, you know, the traders market, the uncertainty in the market will continue until we get through this process of weekly government plans.
You know, Rick, one of our producers says if Roland Burris steps down, man, Senator Santelli, the junior senator
what do you guys
from
think of
Illinois, it's
that?
a possibility. I'm just
Do
saying.
you think I want to take a shower every hour? The last place I'm ever going to live or work is D.C.
Have you raised any money for Blago?
No, but I think that somebody's going to have to start raising money for us.
Hey, Rick, can you do that one more time?
Thanks a
Just
lot.
get the mob behind you again. I love it.
I have the camera pull way out.
Yeah, pull way out. Everybody listen to Rick Santelli.
I don't
that's
think
good.
you can't just do it at will, can you?
What do you
Rick?
guys
I mean, you have to
Did
say
it bring back
something.
good
Yeah,
memories
do it
to you
well.
about
Let's
10
see.
years ago?
Listen, all I know is that
All right,
there's
so
only
listen,
about
we're so
5%.
lucky tonight to have just a great friend of a movement like this. You know, it takes all sorts of people to help a movement, and Binik-Thomas has been that as the voice at 55 KRC, and he's just a friend of change, a friend of movement, and just a voice of sanity. Sometimes, you know, when you just kind of like you're in a Rick Santelli mood, you just feel like you need somebody else to kind of help you along with it, and that's the guy he is. We're really glad to have Brian's wife Paulette with us tonight. Let's give her a round of applause. Raise your hand, please. And with that said, let's get you up here, Brian. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Dan was kind enough to give me some special beer. He's always thinking ahead that way, but then again, that's why we're here. Dan is always thinking ahead, forward thinking. What a great guy. This place dedicated to education. Might I point out the always self-deprecating Dan Reginold. Yes, Dan never likes me to give him a lot of praise. He's always trying to move the subject on, but I can't be here tonight without just sort of pouring some praise on Dan. Again, for the room, for the experience, for the opportunity to be here tonight, for so many opportunities before, for him bringing together a community like this. And if I had to name all the people in this room that I know, that I've got to know over the years, through him, through listener lunch, the political involvements, I would be here all night just naming names. And it's great to see so many friends. And it's just so heartwarming to be here tonight. But if it weren't for people like Dan, and, you know, we're getting get on to Mike Wilson here. We know that's, I mean, one of the reasons we are here is the initiative of Mike. But Dan's another illustration of that, isn't he? Got a vision, got an idea, got motivation. I bet there's some people out in the world that would love to come and speak before another group of community people who are interested in learning something. And they'd probably do it voluntarily, spread the word, give them an education opportunity, which is their motivation, regardless of subject matter, whether it's scotch or bourbon or maybe the Constitution. There are people out in the world that love spreading that word. And that's one of the joys that I get out of my job every day. It's one of the things that gets me up in the morning because, trust me, it's not easy to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I mean, you think after a while you get used to it. I'm in my 13th year and I want to shoot myself in the head every morning when the alarm goes off. You know, Saturday morning comes around, baby, I'm just like, nom, 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 nom. You know, it's 7 o'clock, 7:30, 8 o'clock, nom, nom, nom. It's, you know, you just, but the joy I get out of my job makes it all worthwhile. Not only do I get to meet people like you and interact with people like you, I get challenged. Most fundamentally, I get challenged by folks like you. I have to be sharp on my job. I'm not always a sharp guy. I admit to being wrong. I'm not Rush Limbaugh. I'm the first person. Hey, stand me in line with the imperfect people. I will cut to the front. That's one of the reasons I'm a libertarian politically. It's a little L libertarian. I don't ascribe to all the libertarian philosophies, but you know, it's those imperfections which I appreciate. And I point out regularly on my program, when I am done fixing the man in the mirror, I'll start working on you. Until that time, I'm in no position to judge or challenge. We all have our trials and tribulations. We all have our problems. But one thing that I thought made sense, and we got to go back 10 years from now, and it's amazing it's been 10 years. The passage of time is insane. That it's been 10 years since Mike kicked the Tea Party off. That it's been 10 years since we rallied downtown. That it's been 10 years since this amazing brilliance of a boiled down, which might I remind people of my political philosophy, this boiled down reality, fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free markets, pure and simple. Fundamental principles which I used to think when I was a young, impressionable, and extraordinarily stupid young man, the Republican Party represented, because they used to always challenge these ridiculous spending that was going on in Washington and the runaway deficit. And Ronald Reagan was complaining about billion-dollar deficits. Oh, it was reminded of Monty Python. I lie awake at night dreaming of multi-billion-dollar deficits. 22 trillion and going on 23 this year. The Republicans can't stop it. The Republicans didn't try to stop it before. You know, I am a supporter of Trump for many, many, many reasons. We have an extraordinary response to the tax cuts and the regulatory cuts. It's been amazing. Progress in such a short period of time. But what happened to the deficit? What happened to fiscal responsibility? What happened to these core principles the Republicans used to cling to and fight for and at least run on? I'm used to being lied to on the campaign trail, man, but that was something I always believed in. But lightning seemed to strike 10 years ago. People finally seemed to reach their boiling point. They finally were like, this is it. And I was like, oh my God, you know, and please don't let this turn into Tiananmen Square. You know, seriously, I mean, we were hoping, weren't we? And I'll turn real quick to this op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal today, which I thought did a pretty good job analyzing the past 10 years. And they pointed out very right that, you know, no, Obamacare wasn't repealed. Yes, we are still on insane runaway deficit. But you people, you are the success story in all of this, that the movement continues and you continue to talk. And what you do is productive. What you do is not stand in the middle of a major road fair and wave signs and get pissed off and anger other people and interrupt the flow of goods and services and commerce that makes the money that funds everything. You talk to your congressman, you talk to your people, sorry, trying to be PC. You talk to your elected officials. How's that? Is it better? Apologies to anyone who might be offended by my lack of political correctness on that one. But you work with them. You speak with your friends. You encourage them to get engaged. You point out logic and reason. And this is the greatest thing that the conservative side of the ledger has going forward, and that is the simple dollars and cents reality. We have economics on our side. Put aside any social issue you want, and there are injustices in the world, and I'll recognize them all day long. But in the final analysis, money is what funds and corrects problems. That's why everyone is scrapping for the almighty tax dollar. We're the people who are supposed to be the monitors of what should get funded. If they're going to take money from us, we gosh darn well better make them accountable for it. There are so many crazy stories out there of money that gets spent, insane stories of, and you think to yourself, wait a second, even in the case of something that you could argue is legitimate, putting a wall on the border because we have some problems down there, Donald Trump, Magic Pen, is able to move billions of dollars from one pot to another that was just sitting there, that it may accomplish what we might argue is a good thing, still baffles the mind that, wait a minute, thousands of millions of dollars are simply laying around in government that can be idly shifted? It's true. It is. I mean, and it's not just in the Defense Department. He was able to do that through the defense argument, and that is a legitimate defense component. Have that different argument. Let's stick with the fiscal. It makes you kind of scratch your head and wonder, doesn't it? And if you look at all the insane spending and all the reserves and all the extra money that's floating around, and then when it comes time for budgeting, everybody wants an increase and they're all scrambling to spend all the money they didn't spend during the year so they can keep the same level of funding they had for the past year and get more. That's true. We have a spending problem. And I won't go any longer. I'm not quite sure how long I have allocated time. I did not write down anything other than thank Dan Regenold and the passage of time. Oh, and on that note, since we've all known each other for 10 years, and as I stand up here, real quick, short anecdote, get us off the heady stuff and get a little light before we get Mike on here and he can go heady again. I was helping facilitate the Cure Starts Now fundraiser. It's for cancer research. I'm dedicated to these people. They want to find a cure for cancer overall. But it all started when this beautiful family lost their daughter to pediatric brain cancer. It's the most aggressive cancer in the world. It is a death sentence for most every child, and that's what started lemons into lemonade. And they've raised millions of dollars over the years. For the past 8 years, they've asked me to come help out. And I made the mistake at one point in the evening as I'm talking, we're doing this live auction, and they're doing this live video feed. It's like the camera's aiming, and I'm not really aware of what's going on, the video screen's behind me. But I turned around and I saw me. Man, don't ever do that. I'm like, oh my God, I said out loud, oh my God, I've gotten so old. 2 terms of the Obama administration is going to do that to a man. And I'll pile on right now for anybody who's not in disagreement out in the listening audience out there who didn't want to show up, that's cool. Not just Obama, I'm going to blame the Republicans too. We have a spending problem in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, the founder of the Cincinnati Tea Party, a man who was inspired by that speech you saw, a man who got up and decided, I'm doing something about it, something we are all absolutely capable of, Mike Wilson.
All right, check, mic check. All right, can you guys hear me okay? Oh my goodness, a lot changes in 10 years. You know, I think I have a little bit more gray now than I did before. My kids drove here today. That damn sure didn't happen 10 years ago. You know, but honestly, this is amazing. It is a huge honor to be here with all of you guys and Sam Adams as we celebrate Tax Day. But it feels like a family reunion. It absolutely does. I mean, I think I've hugged half the room tonight as I've had a chance to get reacquainted with some tremendous friends. And I've sniffed less hair than Joe Biden. So that's a win. No, but in all honesty, it is a huge honor to go through and be here with you guys tonight. You know, when Dan reached out to me and said, hey, let's get together, let's do this. You know, it's been 10 years and you know, what happened, what was good, you know, what else is there left to do? I didn't believe him when he said it was 10 years. Amazing. But I look back on that, and I've told the story a number of times. I want to go through and tell it again because I think it's worth telling. You know, but it wasn't, I'm not a political guy. Believe it or not, I don't like politics, right? I followed it kind of obsessively, but from a participation standpoint, this wasn't my thing. I didn't grow up saying I wanted to go run for office. I didn't want to rule over other people. But I saw a problem back in 2009, and I wanted to do something about it. So, you know, after Obama was elected, you know, and I'll embarrass my oldest son here, Kevin, sitting over here. But when Obama was elected, you know, that night we watched the election results, and it was pretty clear early on that Obama was going to win. And, you know, he went to bed early before the final results were announced, and he woke up the next morning and asked me who won the election. I told him, you know, Barack Obama is going to be our president, and he broke down crying. And now, now he was 8 years old, so I'll bet my opinions on that had something to do with it. But in the end, you know, I told him, okay, stop crying, because I wish Obama the best, because I care about this country and I love this country. And as much as I doubted his agenda and where he wanted to take the country, I wanted him to be successful, ultimately because I love this country. And so we said we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But unfortunately, 2009 came around, he was inaugurated, and the first thing that they wanted to do was continue on the bad policies of the Bush administration, continue to extend the TARP bailouts. Then they wanted to pass this stimulus bill, $1 trillion spending bill all at once. Didn't know what was in it, right? Didn't know what was in it. Shovel-ready projects, which is a bunch of BS now and then, right? They were going to go through and add billions, trillions to the deficit without any real understanding of what the benefits were coming out of that. And I was getting progressively more frustrated, and then I saw that Rick Santelli rant on CNBC, and I'm like, okay, Tea Party, all right. And then I read that there were some rallies the previous weekend. So it was a Sunday morning, I woke up and I'm reading about political stuff. I mean, I know I said I didn't like politics, but I'm reading about these rallies that occurred out west. A couple hundred people in Mesa, Arizona, Denver, Colorado, Seattle, Washington. You know, and I thought to myself, if they can have rallies out there that drew a couple hundred people, what could we get here in Cincinnati? So I told my wife and said, hey, I want to put a rally down in Fountain Square about the stimulus bill. I want to call it a tea party. She looked at me like I had two heads. But, you know, God love her, you know, she agreed to go through and do it. Not only that, she agreed to do that first big rally down on Fountain Square on our anniversary. Okay, so yes, I married amazing. Round of applause for my wife, please, on that one. So that afternoon, we went through and figured out how to book an event on Fountain Square, printed off the form, put the, you know, my credit card information down there for the $250 to go through and book that. And then we reached out to the rest of the family and said, hey, we're doing this. You guys want to help? And they said yes, right? So we said we'd go through and put together a little planning event 5 days from then. So this is a Sunday in February. We're going to go through and do a planning event this Friday. So I shared it with a few friends that I thought might be interested. So I figured we might have 10 people there who'd be willing to go through and help. About 45 people showed up, half of whom I didn't know, saying, hey, we're here, we want to do something. So I had a chance to meet Justin, Binik-Thomas that night, Brian Willis back there, a few others. And so we said, okay, we're going to put this rally on now 16 days from that point. So over that time, put up a website. I got Steve Shabbat to come in and agree to speak, and think about that. So I went to his website that first night. And I went through the contact form and said, he doesn't know me from Adam. And I said, hey, Steve, looking to do this event on Fountain Square. Would love it if you'd have an opportunity to come speak as part of that. The next day, I'm at work. I'm actually visiting with a customer. So I'm in a meeting. My phone buzzes in my pocket. And it was one of those, I feel like I have to answer this. And I would never get up from the table and answer my phone in the meeting. I pick up my phone and it says, hey, Mike, it's Steve Shabbat. I about fell out of my chair. But without knowing me, he took a chance on what we were going to do and said, hey, I'd be happy to be there, right? So we had a headliner, and then we did this viral marketing strategy, right? So we went through and we created business cards to go through and hand out. They had the date and time of the event to go through and get people there. And we asked them to come back to the website to go through and sign up, just so we had some idea, how many people were going to come so we could plan. And before you know it, we crossed 100, then we crossed 200, then 500, then 1,000. And before you know it, I'm getting asked to come on TV and radio, to come do interviews about this event that's going on. Before everything was said and done, the night before the event, All right, so this is March 14th, 2009. We had over 7,200 people signed up on the website. 7,200 people. And it was one of those things, I didn't even believe it was real. I had no idea. I mean, who am I? I didn't do this. And so, we show up the next day, 4 hours before the event was scheduled to start at 3, and sure enough, there's already people there, dressed in period costumes, right? As we go through and start to set up. God bless them, right? So we go through and we get the stage set up. We've got music. I got a buddy of mine to go up there and dress up as Uncle Sam. He's a musician. He had a chance to play music for us. Kind of rewrote the lyrics to some songs, which was pretty awesome. And then before you know it, okay, just people just streaming into Fountain Square. Like, holy crap, this is real. They're actually going to show up. And before you know it, okay, they've gone through. Fountain Square is packed. It is the biggest rally in Cincinnati on Fountain Square since the Vietnam War. Almost 6,000 people showed up that day to that event, right? To listen to, well, Steve Shabbat, and I guess he wasn't technically a politician at that point because he wasn't elected. Yeah, still counts, I guess. Chris Monzel, we were glad to have there, one of the true fiscal conservatives that are out there. We went for a little star power getting Michael Munoz, okay, who was a Hamilton Township trustee at the time. But then after that, that was it, right? We had Brian was obviously kind enough to go through and join us that day. Mike McConnell from the big one was there as well. But then you had a college student, you had a stay-at-home mom who homeschooled her kid, we had a downtown attorney, we had some businessmen, and we had me. But it was regular people getting up there to speak around the direction that we're going, okay, the concern that they had for the future of the country and how this was going to impact themselves and their family. And it was amazing. That day we signed a petition to asking our local, state and local officials to reject stimulus funds. And then we decided we're coming back on tax day 2009. We were going to go back to Fountain Square. Now this time we did it, understand, so we had beautiful weather for that first one. The next event on tax day, all right, it was rainy and it was cold and it was on a Wednesday at noon. Now we did that specifically at that time to go through and give our friends up in Dayton an opportunity to kind of take the limelight with their rally in the evening. So that way if people wanted an opportunity to attend both, we did that. And so we still drew 4,500 people that day in the middle of a Wednesday afternoon. And so at that point, you knew something was going on. All of a sudden, this is what put the Tea Party movement on the map. Right? That was the first truly large rally that had occurred across the country. And on tax day, we were amongst, I don't know, thousands of groups totaling over 1 million people across the country that came out on tax day. And at that point, the movement was off and running. And so in the end, it was nice to get up here and reminisce a little bit about that one. But when you talk about, when Dan asked me, what was the legacy of this? What did we accomplish? I mean, there were some policy things that we did that were really good. And I can point to, and we'll talk a little bit more here over some of the fun stuff that we did together. But in the end, this wasn't about rallies. The rallies were fun. Don't get me wrong. It was one of the best things I've ever done in my entire life. But to get a chance to connect with people like you, in the end, we accomplished some things that I thought were really good. But the most important thing was other people needed to realize they weren't alone. Right? Other people were frustrated. Other people were upset. And they needed a way to band together, and that's what we provided. And I think that's more important ever, because right now it's not cool to be conservative. It's not cool to be libertarian, right? Even with Trump in office, who has been one of the most conservative presidents of my lifetime, but at the same time does things that make me cringe about once a week. But again, it's not cool these days, right? The media and the left wing, but I repeat myself, all right, want us to think that we're alone. They want us to think that we're isolated. Right? So I think the number one thing that we can do, the number one legacy of what we did was there are other people out there that think like you, right? And in the end, all of us have the ability to accomplish something. So the fact that something like Empower You is still going 7 years later, okay, is incredible. And this isn't the only group that's out there, right? So with that, I'm going to go through and turn it over to my other guests here before we kind of get into our roundtable panel. The next person I'm going to introduce is another good friend of mine and someone I was blessed to meet as part of this movement. He was the leader and founder of the Southwest Ohio Tea Party, my good friend, George Bredeman.
How many people were there at that March 15th rally? Yeah, it was just amazing to first of all realize it wasn't a dozen people, kind of like the way the Enquirer talked about it afterwards. It was a ton of people, and they all felt the same way. This is just sort of crazy. I'm going to take a little bit different tack for the next 5 minutes or so. I'm an engineer by DNA and training. It's what I would do no matter what. So what you do on a project after it fails or it doesn't succeed as much as you want is you look at what happened. What were the lessons learned? What was the experience? And what can you do now? So I'm going to kind of take that approach to it. You don't have to read the slides. They're more for me, so I know where I'm going. So what were some of the things we learned really early on? And by the way, so we went to the March 15th. We heard about the April 15th. And then my wife and I kind of went offline for a while. It was like, okay, maybe something will happen. Well, yeah, something happened. They took over Chrysler. They took over GM. They took over a couple of banks. They wanted to tax CO2. It was just getting out of control. And of course, everybody was getting these emails. Do you guys remember that? It was like you'd get these email chains from everybody about what's the horrible thing happening today. And somebody sent an email to my wife that said, what are we going to do about it? And she did it. I didn't. So I went down on the record. She said, be at our house on October 15th. And just like Mike was saying, we had 45, 50 people show up, half of which I didn't know. We had Steve Shabbat as well, since he was practically within walking distance of where we lived on the west side. And that was sort of the start of it. We started meeting twice a month. We had to go to once a month because that was getting kind of crazy. How many people are here from the west side? Thank you so much for all that you did. It was an incredible time. But we quickly learned some things, like when you're standing on the North Pole, every direction's south. So we had a president and an administration was driving things so far left that just stating that you thought you should have a balanced budget was a radical idea. What do you mean we're going to balance the budget? We can't do that. Common sense out the window. You know, shovel-ready projects, Solyndra, all of these companies that were basically friends of the administration, getting millions and millions, billions and trillions of dollars. A lesson that our next speaker can tell you better than anybody is don't poke the bear, especially when they own the IRS. So we learned that one really the hard way. So in January of 2012, as the Tea Party is still fairly large, I was president of the Tea Party at that time, we had maybe what, 30,000 people on the email list in 2012. We get a phone call from the IRS. We need to audit you because of your association with the Cincinnati Tea Party. She came right out and said it in the phone call. It was because my wife was the treasurer during the Sean Hannity event in 2010. And they basically want to shut down anybody that was thinking of, you know, mounting an attack against that administration in the 2012. So we get an audit. They audited both our business. They audited all of our personal stuff. They never asked a single question about the Cincinnati Tea Party checkbook. Not one. They were not there because of that. They wanted to stop us, and it worked. You notice Nancy isn't here right now. So when you do taxes for a living and the IRS visits you because they don't like what you're doing, you have to stop what you're doing. And so that's kind of the lesson learned, and Justin will give you some more on that one. Politics. This is another one of my wife's sayings that just makes so much sense. Politics is a criminal activity where nobody goes to jail. You can give money to your friends, you can trade on insider information, you can steal, you can take money and give it to your campaign and then run it to your own LLC. Happened just this last period. It's a criminal activity, but nobody gets arrested for it. Government spending never decreases. There's no such thing as a temporary government program. So when they did the stimulus that cost us $1 trillion, sure enough, the next year, that $1 trillion is already in the budget. You can't take it away. It's built in. How do you stop something that never can go backwards? But for the record, the spending is now higher than ever in history. And for the last 5 years, the income to the United States Treasury is higher than it's ever been in history. They're setting records on the amount of tax dollars they collect, but they're still borrowing $1 trillion a year. The other thing we quickly learned, the best time to influence a politician is when he's running for office. That's the only way you can gain influence after the election. That's the only way you can influence what they stand for and hopefully keep them accountable for that. That's the secret. You gotta get involved early on. So what are some of the lessons learned? First, it's very easy to change the process at a local level. And I'm going to point out Peter here. He yelled at me for getting him involved in Delhi Township. Him and 3 other peoples were able to totally change how the township did their meetings. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to vote on Bill 153, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. What's 153? They never explained it. Just by sitting in there and saying, excuse me, can you tell me what you're voting on? Change the entire process at the township level. You can do that. You can even change it a little bit at the state level. Once it gets above that, it's out of control. But you can have an immediate effect with just a few people just by attending the smaller government meetings. The problem is nothing changes underneath, and we'll get to that. You can't change the system. The way that primary people are selected, so in 2010, the big thing was we were able to get Brad Wenstrup in to District 2 and get rid of the previous. That was because Brad had already paid his dues. He had ran for mayor, he lost, but he was in the system. He was the next guy in line. To try and break that trend is nearly impossible, especially for like appointees. So if your township person retires or gets out of the job, the person that goes into that job is totally chosen by a very, very small group of people downtown, like 3 people. And you can't change that. Why? The politicians and the government employees no longer look at it as their job is to listen to you. Their job is to keep their job. So IRS people prior to 2008, 2009, you would call with a question, they try and answer your question. Now, how can I get more money for my department? How can I keep this person from trying to save money? It's all about protecting the bureaucracy. So even though the administration has changed, that bureaucracy is the same people. They're still protecting themselves. So FBI, CIA, NSA, you can see how they're protecting themselves now, even if it is illegal. The third thing, and it's kind of formatting's a little screwed up, but it's easy to think about. So what attracted me initially, after our meeting on October 15th, we're sitting at a stoplight at Rybolt as you come off of 74, and the car in front of us has got a bumper sticker that says, fiscal responsibility, limited government, free markets. Holy cow, CincinnatiTeaParty.org. We immediately go there, called them up, got involved, and the rest was all downhill from there. Nancy's treasurer, I'm helping out with the meetings. It was crazy after that. But what we thought was important at the time was fiscal responsibility. $1 trillion borrowed is a lot of money. Free markets made a ton of sense. They just took over 2 car companies, banks, and everything else. They wanted to take over the power industry. But it turns out, and what we've learned now, and I think most people would agree, the only one of those 3 that matters is limited government. What it says down there at the bottom, individual freedom is what's left over after the government tells you how to do every other aspect of your life. I mean, they regulate how much water's in your toilet, how much you can have in a shower, how much money you can take home and keep versus, what you earned. Everything is regulated. And the more they take it, the less you've got left over when it's done. So what are the current threats? And this is more to get people thinking and determine where do we go from here. I mean, do we start these things back up again? I see 3 enormous issues threatening America today. And the first one's the most obvious. How do you beat Santa Claus? Socialism is nothing more than Santa Claus. They're going to take the money that you earned by working overtime and give it to some guy that doesn't feel like working at all. And you can do that because more than 50% of the people are on the take now. So the takers are taking from the makers, and sooner or later you run out of makers. The bottom line is you can just look at what's happened in Cincinnati. The city of Cincinnati is totally taken over by the entitlement class. It's now spread to Chris Monzel is no longer on Hamilton County. We have nobody looking for dollars anymore. And lo and behold, 6 months after Chris leaves Hamilton County Commissioners, they've got a budget deficit of multiple millions of dollars that wasn't there while he was around or while they had the majority. It's going to keep spreading until somebody does something to stop it. The second threat, which is actually, I mean, we're getting up in importance here, right? The second threat is there's no source of truth anymore. The media, those of us that grew up in the 80s and the late 70s, you remember how we used to talk about Pravda over in Russia? It was nothing but propaganda. They make stuff up and put it out there. Pravda would be embarrassed by what's happening at CNN and MSNBC right now. Nothing but lies. And if somebody gets a fact out there, they either change the fact or don't report it at all. How do you get past that? And to make matters worse, the education system no longer teaches kids a compass of any sort to look at that stuff. They can't tell truth from fiction. They're taught that capitalism only helps the rich. That's baloney. If you look back, I mean, I know I'm getting older, and I apologize for that, I guess. You know, when I was born, there was no such thing as unemployment. There was no such thing as welfare. There was no such thing as Department of Education. If you lost your job, your friends, your neighbors, and your family helped you out. Everybody had that money because the taxes didn't take it all from you and figure out how they're going to take care of it. And if I give my neighbor $20 to help him out, he gets $20. If I give the government $20, he gets $1. So, I mean, that's kind of where we are. And the last point, and I'll let it go, there is no political party that's looking out for America. This is extremely sad, given the amount of effort we've given to the GOP. 2017, 2018 made it very obvious they have no intention on ever changing the situation. Record spending, record deficits, record amount of tax income, didn't build a wall, didn't do anything for security, and they had all three branches. When we first flipped over to the first district for Steve Shabbat, what we learned to hear at every single meeting is, we're only 1/2 of 1/3 of the government. Well, then in 2014, we gave them the Senate. Oh, well, we're still only 1/3 of the government. 2017, you guys owned it all. You could do whatever you want. Get rid of Obamacare. Get us to a balanced budget. What do? Not a bloody thing. So where do we go when there's no party that's talking about working people? How do we get at that? How do we affect this? That's the question. Where do we go from here? Thank you all for being here. It's amazing to see you people. So the next guy up, Justin here, has the distinct, I don't know if you call that an advantage or what. Out of 300 million people in the United States, the IRS wants to know why you're talking to him.
Yeah, I think I made some friends. I don't hear this. Okay, good. Friends in low places, right, guys? George, you outdid me with the coat, so we'll have something deplorable up here anyway. Can you hold this, miss? What do you think? Oh? All right, guys, I'm going to get to this at the end, but I want to pass this out because I have a lot of people here. My job in all of this was, well, a few publicity stunts. Keeping the story right, keeping the story on point, working with really everybody here to get it going. So this was one of my favorites. We'll talk about it in a little bit. So George, you got me on question 26. You're exactly right. So we talk about being effective. What happens when you're effective? Poke the bear. Those are your terms, right? I'm missing your PowerPoint. But that's exactly what happened. The IRS is asking people questions. Who is Justin Binik-Thomas? How do you know this guy? And not just here, not just these groups out in Liberty Township. Well, ironically, I now live. And people across the country, who is this guy? Probably not the best situation. So, leading as the others, what brings me here? What brought me here? I was worried about the rapidly expanding role of government in the Bush years and later in the Obama term. I became aware of the Tea Party movement. Of course, from the Tea Party, we watched the clip early on. I'm pointing as if it's still on. If Brian was here, he'd say I was looking at me in the corner. So we ran one of the most effective groups in the nation. One of them is still around today. We helped with the strategy. We laid the foundations of the Ohio Liberty Council. And We worked together with a national group with the core values we talked about: fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free markets, that was adopted nationally, statewide, and locally. And then there's this little group you may know about called Empower You that grew out of this group. So thank you all for being here tonight. We isolated these principles because it's something that this group of people, the larger group of people, could agree on. Libertarians, conservatives, and at one point anyway, Republicans. Each of our communications and each of our events was tied to one of those core values. We're very careful to keep that message consistent and to stay out of the social issues, because our goal was to, wasn't to impact change, and was to enact change at any level that we could. Some of us local, some of us national, engage at whatever level we were. We had numerous elected officials swept into power with our help. One of them, the governor of Indiana, now the vice president of the United States. Thanks in large part to this group here. Little cameo in the back there. As I led with, my job boiled down to effective media relations. We wanted to be the point and the counterpoint of issues related to our core values. With the support of the leadership, we were able to assure nationwide coverage, and we were able to keep it positive with respect to our team. The worst they ever said about Cincinnati is their crowd size is a little bit smaller. And you know what? That's a non-issue. I count that as a win. We had spots on all the local stations, 5, 9, 12, Enquirer. We were on all the national news. We were invited to meet representatives in Washington. We were invited to meet representatives in Columbus. They even came down here. We worked with what is now what is fighting the mainstream media. At the time was very new. Sorry, babe, wherever you are. What is now The Blaze, Instapundit, and Twitchy, before any of them were really huge. Years after, we were sought out again to support the presidential election. The leadership team supported now Secretary Carson, some Senator Cruz, and some President Trump as representatives to the Electoral College. I think that's a pretty big win. And so I want to close my little piece about talking about two of my favorite projects. If you got here early, can you switch on the clipboard, the pictures rather? The slide deck that we led with?
We can't do it, Justin. We can't do it.
We can't. Okay. All right. So if you came here early and you saw those, many of those pictures were of these two events. So one of them was Oh Congress. That's the book that is slowly circulating its way backward. And that was a lot of fun, but I can't say it was well received. If you're reading these as you go, we solicited feedback from people across the state of Ohio. And it was about the popular issues of the time. So there'll be stuff from the bailouts, there'll be stuff from the healthcare bill, and a few other, hot button issues. And the goal was that we would effectively give them a negative performance review in the context of a published book. It burned a little bit, and they didn't forget it. So the books you see are all blinded, because by law, they can't know each other's stuff. But each of them got a very specific listing that had the names and the addresses of the people in their area. They're required by law to respond to any feedback that they got in the area. So even if they didn't want to hear me, they had to pay someone to send each and every one of those people a letter about whatever they thought remotely related to it. And so there were pictures where we met with the Speaker of the House. There were pictures we met with our local representatives in District 1 and District 2 at the time. And how many boxes did we have? It was the whole back of your van. It was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. The second one I want to talk about was Read the Bill. And this is really my favorite. This was my favorite game of everything we did all the way through. Mike, we were talking about this earlier. Read the Bill is based on should be the obvious fact is you can't read the bill in the time allotted. So with pressure from our groups and others, the Speaker of the House at the time says, we'll give you 3 days to read the bill before you have to vote on it. So we said, you know what? Let's try it. Can we read it in 3 days? So we rented a room. We all got together. We had people take 15-minute segments. We didn't read the bill. Spoiler. beginning to end, 24/7. We made it maybe 80% of the way through, just the text. Mind you, a bill, if anyone's read a bill, it is not like a book. It makes reference to another place and reference to another place and so on. It changes clause A to clause B, term A to term B, and you've got to know all that context. We didn't even attempt that. We just tried to read it. It didn't work. We did 24/7, 3 days. So effectively, there's no sleep. I guarantee you the officials slept. I guarantee whoever they paid, they slept. There's no way in heck, can I say heck at least? Anyone at all read the bill. So with this, I agree with Nancy Pelosi. You got to read the bill to find out what's in it. Wasn't kidding. So we're going to go into a panel.
We've got a couple other things to do, and then we're going to go to a
Absolutely.
panel discussion. So let's thank the three. So we asked Congressman Wenstrup if he would be kind enough, if he could come tonight and say a few words, because he was a big fan of the Tea Party movement. He wasn't able to join us, but we've got a short video that he was nice enough to send us. And Andrew McAfee from his staff is in the back. Let's thank him for coming and getting us the video. Thanks, Andrew. Here we go.
Good evening. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you tonight, but I want you to know how grateful I am for everything that you're doing. It makes a big impact, believe me. In fact, thanks to your efforts and the efforts of the Tea Party across the country, we have a Republican in the White House. Despite Democrats' best efforts, President Trump won because folks like you stood up and said, enough is enough. Enough overregulation and enough big government. After President Trump won, you didn't quit. You stayed engaged. The newly elected Republicans in Washington listened and passed the most sweeping tax reform in over 30 years. That wouldn't have happened without the efforts of the Tea Party. Like the Patriots who threw British tea into the Boston Harbor, your efforts also changed the course of history for our nation. And I thank you for that. Since the Republican tax cuts were signed into law, paychecks keep growing. People are going back to work, and our economy is healthy. I thank you for continuing to stay engaged and educating those who will help grow the conservative movement. Our freedom is a gift from our founding fathers, but it is one we must fight for every single day and never take for granted. We're really feeling that right now. As President Reagan famously said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. Today we're starting to see what happens when we don't educate the next generation. We see people asking for a handout instead of a hand up. We see more Americans than ever demanding socialism and its close cousin, Medicare for all. You've studied history, and you know these ideas don't work. They sound good on paper, but again, to quote President Reagan, socialism only works in two places: heaven, where they don't need it, and hell, where they already have it. I want you to know that I'm fighting against these dangerous ideas and working for you, your family, and neighbors every day in Washington. Thank you for being involved and working for a better future for our great nation and the generations we leave it to. Thank you, and God bless America.
What do you say? Okay, if anybody could go make a call to Bernie's town hall tonight to give him that comment about socialism, I'm all for it. Who wants to do that? Hey, before we start Teresa, you'll do it. Go, please. Before we start our little panel discussion and get your questions ready, so many groups came out of the Tea Party movement. I asked Denise Mayer, who's just been such an incredibly effective advocate, to come up and tell us a little bit about her initiative. Denise, let's give her a round of applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I have to go really fast, so if I don't make a lot of sense, it's because I'm rushing. In 2010, Tracy Hunter and John Williams were in a tumultuous conflict in the election for juvenile court judge. I'm sure you remember that. Out of this conflict and the fact that poll worker error was cited led to the formation of the fraud squad, where Janice Fuller and I trained volunteers to look for discrepancies while serving as poll workers. So many of you wonderful poll workers stepped up. In 2012, Mike Wilson, a proponent of True the Vote, connected Mary Siegel, Marlene Coker, who's here today, if you want to stand and wave, Marlene, and myself to join forces on voter issues. Well, there you are. This new organization, the Ohio Voter Integrity Project, was born and would continue for over 7 years. OVIP looked into voting issues that concerned Tea Party activists while working with True the Vote. Properties via databases were researched by volunteers under the tutelage of Marlene Coker. This was an attempt to identify buildings that had multiple voters who were then researched to be sure they were actual voters at that address. Later that year, we split from True the Vote and created our own initiative. During that time, we were put on a website with all of our personal information. Phone calls in the middle of the night, right? Yes. Representative Cummings came after us. The LA Times came after us. Yeah, it was an interesting time, to be sure. But all this work that we did over 7 years culminated in the recommendations that we sent to the Trump Presidential Commission on Election Integrity. From our work, we identified major areas of concern, because you don't know what you don't know till you figure out you don't know it. So it took a lot of time of talking with the Secretary of State, asking questions. It was kind of like when you give the little sex talk to your kids and you hope they only ask certain questions because that's all you're going to answer. That's what happened with us. We'd ask the question, we'd get this little answer, but it was never the whole story. So it took a long time to do this, but we discerned that double voting was going to be a problem because there was no database that talked to each other from state to state, and there's still not any. And so people that are voting, live in New York, are voting in Florida, and during the same election. Now I'm going to try to rush here. We have fictitious registrations that can still continue because they're not able to be verified. The Secretary of State knows this, and everybody knows these things go on, but they haven't been taken care of because it's a verification thing that has to happen, and the Board of Elections' hands are tied on a lot of it. If we had Homeland Security database, that would be a huge help. We don't. So legally present non-citizens can register and vote in the United States because they obtain a driver's license, a state ID, or a social security card. And the driver's license look the same as yours. So what I'm getting at is you cannot rest on your laurels, because what's happening going forward is we have a whole lot of illegal aliens who are going to be able to vote. And some of them come up from Mexico, and some of the ICE agents tell us that these non-citizens already have voting cards when they're shipping them back, and they've already voted. So when we look at what's coming down the road, I think is very, very frightening. And we did make some real progress, though, at the Hamilton County Board of Election, and after a while they actually respected us and were willing to work with us on a pretty regular basis. And Marlene was very instrumental. We did some of the grunt work too, Mary and I, but Marlene was very instrumental in getting the Port Authority and the demolished building list. We'd go around and take pictures of things. There was no building there, but there were 30 people registered to vote there. So now, this is really great, in the last year, maybe 2 years, they are starting to do that all on their own. So we don't have to supply lists of this building was knocked down or whatever. So there's so many problems, and I know you're tight on time, so I'm not going to get into all of them. But think about 57,000 voters in Virginia are registered in at least 3 states. So until we get better databases that can be shared by everyone, every state, and until we work on our residency problems, because you can come to Ohio, and believe me, Chicagoans do, and they are here for 30 days. That's all you have to do. And because we vote early, they vote early, and then they move on back to Chicago and vote there again. And because we don't have these databases, we don't know. So all of this information, along with the list of problems with sensible solutions, was submitted to the Presidential Commission, but as of today, we've heard nothing. We continue to attend BOE meetings and serve as watchdog for election issues in Hamilton County. The BOE in the past 2 years has assumed that responsibility. They're doing a lot of stuff with the, it's now called the Greater Cincinnati Development Authority. Although we are validated by this progress and all the hard work we've done, we remain very concerned about the non-citizens voting. We pray something changes or our republic, as we know it, will be lost. Thank you.
Thank you. You did super. So now the funnest part, the question and answer segment, we're going to start with our three panelists. And before we do that, I wanted to thank the sponsor of tonight's program, and I know she's here, Diane Landy, right there. Let's thank her. So we're going to start a little bit with, with a fast round here. And we'll go left to right. So we'll start with you, Mike. You told us, I think, why you got personally involved. How did Cincinnati interact with the national and state movements?
Yeah, so that's it's an interesting question. So you guys hear me okay? I think it's picking me up here.
There you go.
Yeah, Jay, I'm muting in between, so you can probably just leave the volume up on that as part of it. So we, it's interesting. So we kind of kicked things off in Cincinnati. We were the first like truly big movement across the country. It's like Justin said before, the free markets, fiscal responsibility, and limited government, that came from Cincinnati. Core values for the Tea Party movement were something that were kind of hashed out here in Cincinnati initially. And then Justin and I were on a conference call kind of leading up to the tax day events in 2009. We were kind of talking through why we had focused on that as the core to go forward with the nationwide movement. So something we're incredibly proud of. But in the end, we were kind of on our own. We were off doing our thing, but we wanted to be supportive where we could, trying to help out other organizations in the state and across the country. But it's a super funny story. The thing at the time, the left was so jealous of what we were doing, right, and our ability to go through and mobilize people and get them engaged. And so they wanted to fake grassroots. I had a buddy of mine who actually came up to me, someone that worked with me at the time, and said, this whole Tea Party thing, it's a bunch of fake grassroots. You guys are AstroTurf, right? You guys are getting paid by the Koch brothers.
I wish.
You know me. You know that's not true, but he wouldn't let it go. He had read it in a Playboy article, the big, someone reads it for the articles, right? As part of that. But again, this was totally organic. This was us just deciding we wanted to go do something. No coordination, no money, just people here in Cincinnati who cared about the future of the country getting together for that.
Hey, Jay, can we turn all three mics off up here, please? And we're going to go with the handheld, and they're going to pass it back and forth. I think the three mics are kind of interfering with each other. George, how about you?
We actually didn't do much interaction on the bigger scale until late in say 2012, and then when the IRS debacle started up, the fact that was happening literally in downtown Cincinnati, which is where our friend there was launching the attacks, when that started happening, then the CNNs and everybody else started calling. Actually, CNN's the only one I hung up on because it was obvious they were asking gotcha questions the whole time, and I finally said that's enough. But it was amazing. I guess the biggest thing we did is as we got more and more involved in the campaigns, which sort of got us our chits so we could talk to these guys. We could go up to DC and get meetings with Portman. We could get meetings with Shabbat and Wenstrup, and that's when we were able to say, listen, we know this is coming up. Here's what the people that we're talking to think about. Here's our mailing list. We're going to get them all to give you a call, and that's how we actually got things going. Again, we always concentrated on the local area, what's happening in the Cincinnati District 1, 2, in trying to influence things from that direction.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate both statements. The core values were written here, I think in Mike's living room over a beer. It's usually how they worked. And they were adopted nationally, as well as the state movement adopted those core values nationally. I think by doing that, we were able to work together, at least in a more informal way. It's not that we were lockstep or dovetail, but we were certainly working towards the same three goals. And in doing so, we appeared much bigger than we were, and that was totally cool with all of us.
Could you tell us, while you have the mic, what were the top accomplishments of the Tea Party you feel like?
Well, I would sort of break it in different timelines. So, you know, this last few years, I think we had a pretty good say in the presidential election. We had a good say in getting some of the key leaders involved, including the now vice president and some of the key personnel. Along the way, I think some of my favorite pieces were at the state level. We were engaged in the Healthcare Freedom Amendment, which was an adjustment to our state constitution, in large part to some guys in this room. And that was the relationship building that George had inferred. It wasn't just the larger group, which certainly did the legwork, but it was having the support, or at least the lack of resistance, of the officials along the way.
George? I guess initially the biggest thing, when our group started off, if you'll remember at the time, there was a jury house involved, not Denise this time, but her brother Steve, who had just displaced Shabbat out of District 1. And so that was sort of, we focused on that like a laser beam, had our own voter models. I work in artificial intelligence, so I had created my own voter model to choose, which houses we went to. And we literally flipped District 1 before it was so totally gerrymandered as it is now. But to get Steve out there. And that gave us a direct line then to be able to talk to Steve about the issues. Of course, at that time, they're still in the minority. They're still not making the big changes, but it certainly was a huge success in our first effort. Later in the 2012 timeframe with the IRS debacle, it was interesting that we were able to raise the issue, but when we finally had control of all the committees, they dropped it. And so nobody ever faced any penalties for doing that. The other thing I forgot to mention early on, the fact that we stopped cap and trade in its tracks, that would have brought the economy to a standstill.
Yeah, not to mention card check as well, which was another thing that was on the table at the time. And I credit the Tea Party movement with what we did locally and nationally with stopping both of those horrible policies. And kind of building on the Steve Driehaus thing, I'm pretty sure we ran off little Stevie Driehaus to Africa. So,
yeah. So, Mike, when you hear somebody like AOC say that the Tea Party was on the forefront of the white supremacy movement, how does that make you feel?
Well, I don't have a degree in economics from Boston University like her, but that tells me everything I need to know about our educational system today in America. But honestly, I got to tell you, frankly, that pisses me off, okay? Because I've been hearing this crap for years, and I can't tell you how untrue it is. Now, yeah, and you get a big enough group, okay, you're going to go through and you're going to find someone who's crazy. But we did a great job, especially here in Cincinnati, making sure that people stayed true to the message. I don't know anything in fiscal responsibility, limited government, and free market that says white, black, Asian, or anything else, right? And it's a bunch of crap.
Thank you. George.
Two stories, they're both true. When I became president of the Cincinnati Tea Party and was doing interviews, I forget who it was. I want to say it was Peggy Noonan from Wall Street Journal, made that comment, are you a racist? And I said, yes, I am. I can't stand people with hair. I delayed just long enough for her to have a heart attack. But the second thing is, do you guys remember a movie that came out called Runaway Slave? Okay, it was Reverend C.L. Bryant and K. Carl Smith were in that movie. And my wife and I went to see it at Newport on the Levee. And we kind of stayed afterwards, and we noticed some people running around. And I walked down to see what was going on. And I thought, oh, great, we got protesters here. And for some reason, the guy recognized me. He says, oh, George, we've been waiting for you. And I'm like, what the heck did I do? Well, K. Carl was at the movie and wanted to talk to us. And we immediately, actually, the Cincinnati Tea Party paid to have him come to Cincinnati during the election cycle to do some talks and speak on behalf of the Cincinnati Tea Party. I don't think the racist thing ever made any sense. I just don't understand where it came from.
And Justin, before we go to questions, I want you to tell everybody what happened the night Sean Hannity didn't come to Cincinnati. Here's the real story, guys.
The real story. So we could get there early at the event at UC. His team was there setting up, and everything looks pretty good. And I don't know, half an hour or so before the event, they start taking down the stage. And they haven't told any of us anything at this point. But certainly we've noticed that there was a stage and there's not a stage. And then his little, that's right, exactly, George. Then the music stops behind him. There's always someone infamous coming when you've got a theme song behind you. So he's gone. We all know he's gone, but we have no information whatsoever. And of course, that's the only thing the media is interested in talking about is, hey, look, he's not here. And we don't know any more than they do, except they blamed it on a family emergency of some sort. So we ran with that. And that is all they tried to do. Every interview I had, and we wished him well. And we had a big smile on our faces. And we reminded them of all the things we accomplished and how fantastic our event was. And we invited them out to watch it. And most of them did.
Thank you. Let's take some questions, comments. We're going to go 10 minutes long tonight, everybody, so try to hang in there with us. It should be fun. Please say your first name.
Pam. My question is, we're still going. The Tea Party is not dead. We are still working. We have quite a job to do right now. We need to get out to the people. We need to be the media. We need to replace the media. And that's what we're planning to do. And we need you guys. Think about it.
Thank you. Other
Give a question back.
comment right here.
Maybe we take just a couple minutes and talk about Convention of States.
So the idea behind Convention of States is to try and get an amendment to fix some of the issues. It's a great idea if we could control it, but without the ability to control the media, I think it's an extremely dangerous operation because it's a very legal and sophisticated process, and the ability of the CNNs and MSNBC to correctly educate on what's going on is nil. So it's one of those things that would be a fantastic idea, but I don't think we could ever get through the noise to make it do the results that we were actually looking for. Something that hasn't been mentioned was an effort Dan started in 2012 called We Demand a Balanced Budget. That actually had some legs. I think we were about 6 months to a year late in trying to get that kicked off. And I think that could do as much or more than anything else right now, just forcing them to live within some kind of spending level. That is doable without a Convention of the States. I'm absolutely convinced we can get that done through petition.
This gentleman right here will talk to you about Convention of States after this meeting, right up here if you are interested. Can I tell you a quick story about We Demand a Balanced Budget? George and I go to Washington, D.C. to meet with Rob Portman. We go in his office. He's got this canoe. It's the coolest looking canoe. It had to be the best canoe that your taxpayer dollars ever paid for. Of course, Rob wouldn't meet with us. Okay, so we got his top policy official, who was like 24 and a half. And his comment to me was, and he looked at us right in the face, and you tell them if this is true or not. He said, rather than sign your We Demand a Balanced Budget bill, we'd rather spend another, was it $1 trillion and get it right instead of going with your plan. And that's when I knew we were in awful big trouble. Is that about right?
It was a gentleman who I don't think has ever lived in the real world. He was from one of the think tanks. The other good thing that came out of that is that late in that meeting, Pam Thielsen came in. I don't know if you remember Pam. She was Rob's chief of staff and the legislative person that advises him. She's actually fairly conservative, and for a couple of years I maintained connection with her, basically trying to push Rob from the center to the right. You can see how successful we were there. But that was a strange one.
Let's take some questions. Who's got a question right here?
Bob Bramall. My question is this. I went down to Senator Portman's office the day after he didn't vote to approve the emergency legislation. I'm a member of the Heritage Action Sentinel. Rob Portman has a 54% conservative lifetime voting record.
That's higher.
That's our senator, and of course we got Sherrod Brown. That's got a 4%. I just can't figure out where Sherrod Brown screwed up and got a 4%. But I think most people in this room, if you go to Heritage Action Scorecard, you can find out that Steve Shabat's got an 83% voting. The reason being, we have to really early, they said, make the changes in the district, the easiest place to do it, and that's what we got to do.
Questions right here.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm Teresa, and I've followed you for a long time. And I have a few points. First of all, have you heard of the book, The Naked Communist? No. The Naked Communist from 1958. A few points, if I may, real quick, because they're very important. There's 45 points to take over America. 1, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind, which is wrong. God is the only hope. Another is capture one or both of the political parties in the U.S. Another, use technical decisions of the courts to weaken basic American institutions. Also, get control of the schools and soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Gain control of student newspapers.
Yeah, you're quoting almost exactly the Saul Alinsky principles as well.
Well, yeah, there's 45 of them, and we were almost there until 2016. And you're exactly right. Use student riots to foment public protests. Infiltrate the press, getting control of the book reviews, assignments, editorial writings, and policy-making positions. Gain control of key positions in radio, TV, and motion pictures. Continue discrediting American culture and promote repulsive things. And I'll just skip over a few and go down to discredit the Bible, eliminate prayer, discredit American Constitution and family fathers. Read the book by 1958 American or the Naked Communists, and you'll get the rest of them.
Thank you. Questions? Who's got a couple questions?
Dan, can I comment before we go
Yes,
on?
absolutely. Betty in the back.
Okay, so related to that, we learned something I think really important at our first rally in March, and it's tangibly related there. So you get a big rally, you definitely get the camera time, you definitely get heard. You have one person show up, and they get to be the counterpoint. So we learned very quickly we needed to also be the counterpoint. So not only were we the primary rally, which is what we did most of, but we were that counterpoint. We strove, the three of us, to be that other person. If someone said something crazy, we wanted to say something of reason. So that works both ways, but very valid.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Ray Warwick from Warren County. One of the other initiatives of the Tea Party was to get us to go out and take over precinct seats, to take over local parties to affect the primary elections. Ted Stevenow and Rick Herron came out to Warren County, gave us the playbook. We looked at it. We said, well, we'll do this. We thought it'd take us a couple elections. We took over the Republican Party in Warren County the first time. They have a thing called a reorg meeting. I went to the first Republican meeting in Warren County that night and was elected chairman. And now some of you speakers have said critical things about Republicans tonight. And as a former chairman of a county party, I just want to make it clear, Republicans suck.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got a question right here.
Hi, my name is Calvin, Claremont County Tea Party. We gave you Brad. So anyway, my question is, I really don't want to leave here with what's next. So do we have a plan? If not, maybe I could suggest a start. Since socialism is like the big thing out there now versus us, maybe we protest at a college. We don't like socialism. I just don't want to leave here without what do we do next?
Good question.
Dan would.
Yeah, I wish there was a magic answer to that one. I really do. But when I go back and I look at 2009 and the 2010 and the election that came up there that year, we made fiscal responsibility an issue, right? We didn't go into that election cycle. Remember, Obama got elected in 2008. He didn't run saying he was going to lower the deficit. In 2010, because of the activism of everybody else in this room, okay, everybody who ran for Congress right, on the Republican side, and most of the ones on the Democrat, at least paid lip service to it, right? We made that into an issue because of our focus message repeated over and over and over, right? And so in the end, like I said, I don't have a magic answer for what we can do right now. You know, maybe it's a balanced budget, right? Maybe it's continuing some of the education that we do here. Maybe it's a lot of some things, right? But in the end, you know, the question isn't what we have to go do. It's just going and doing it. You get people engaged here, remind them that they're not alone, and I think the magic can happen again.
Question right here.
You mentioned earlier there were 3 people that control the Republican Party here in Hamilton County. Who are those 3?
Two of them are, yeah, there you go. There's the guy that, a friend of mine used to work for him. I asked what they thought of him. Joe Dieters. Only thing missing from him is the cape and the crown. And unfortunately, he's the kingmaker. He still is. And then the other 2 are Alex, obviously. And then there's 1 or 2 that are in the shadows more, and I'll leave them there for now. But well, those 2 actually are out in the front. I'd prefer not to name names from behind.
We've got another question right here from a great Tea Party leader, Tom O'Brien. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Dan. Guys, I'd just like you to follow up on Ray's comments and also this gentleman over here wanting an action plan. We're back to the grassroots and on the encouragement and direction that came from the organization to encourage folks to get involved in their local communities and involved in local elections. Have not only had great results in Warren County, but in Butler County as well. And we own the Westchester trustees and Shannon and Fairfield, you know, so you might comment on what some of our young novice politicians have done and what the opportunities are going forward.
Yeah, so we've got more ability to be impactful at the lower level than we do anywhere else. And so probably the thing that when I look back on this, the thing that I'm most proud of, right, was saying, let's go get directly engaged, right? We wanted to be about effective activism, and what's more effective than actually running to office and get elected? Yeah, I didn't do that, I failed, but no, but I was willing to go through and give it a shot. But a lot of people ran for office and they won. They won precinct executives, okay, they won seats in the state central committee, they won township trustees, they won city council races, and every single one of those people that are in office had the ability to make an impact. The problem is there's not enough of them, right? So if you're looking for one thing that you can do, that anybody in this room can go through and do right now, it's go find a candidate that you like in your area, and if you don't like them, okay, then go run yourself, right? Put yourself out there. And I know it's easier said than done, but it's so impactful.
Here's the last question.
Actually, it's not a question. I just want to make a statement. I don't know how many of you are watching what's going on now, right now. What's going on in Washington, D.C. right now. We've got to get the FBI and all of these things that tried to stop the Trump election, and we've got to get them out of there. We've got to have them punished or so forth, or we're not going to have a country.
And that's kind of the point earlier. That's the exact point of the fact that the bureaucracy doesn't move. 2 quick things before we leave. There's something that we learned through the 2009, 2012 election campaigns. One is, this isn't checkers. This is 3-dimensional chess where the people in charge can change the rules at any point in time. That's politics. 3-dimensional chess, they can change the rules whenever they want. The second is, the way this process works is a lot like waxing your car. You know, if you do it once a week, it'll stay nice and polished, but the time you stop and you just go and do something else for a few months, it's gonna get dirty again. The only way to succeed in this is we gotta keep polishing it. You have to keep hammering the message nonstop all the time, or they're gonna go back to what they always did.
What do you guys say? Let's thank our guests, our great guests. We'll let you talk in just a second. So, yeah, standing ovation isn't bad. Let's go. Come on. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so real quick, back down, real quick before we go, just a couple things. One of those ways you can, what's the analogy, George, to wash the car? Is to sign up for this state auditor's class on open records and open meetings. 3 hours, it'll be a great investment of time for you. So I just thought that this would be a fitting gift for the founder of the Cincinnati Tea Party. What do you guys think? And we've got commemorative plaques for our other two great speakers tonight. Thank you, thank you. George Brenneman, Justin Binik-Thomas. And we're having a little after party over at BJ's at Tri-County. I hope you can come and share a drink with us. We're going to head over there in about 5 or 10 minutes after you guys have a chance to say goodbye to everybody. And it's just been wonderful seeing you. Yes, Rose, we're out of time. Oh, yes. Gina and Ed Bell. Yes, yeah. And I believe Gina and Ed are probably watching tonight. I'm sorry, guys. Thank you so much for everything. Have a great night, everybody. We hope to see you tomorrow night for the Doolittle Raid class. Thank you, everyone.